Because the eternal, that which always is, will be here, was here long before your body was here. It will be here all the time your body's here, and it will be here long after your body's melted into the universe. And this is the peace that surpasses all understanding. Because when the timeless wakes up, that awakeness, that consciousness which is timeless. Everybody knows the time-bound consciousness, right? It's about me and my life, and it has to go to work, and it has to get home, and it has to make money, and it has to take care of the kids, and it has to figure everything out constantly. That's the time-bound consciousness. It's always wrapped up in time. You notice there's a part of consciousness that's constantly wrapped up in time. Everything that happens in time. And of course, when that's the only state of consciousness we have access to, we feel incomplete. Not totally whole. Prone to fear, anxiety. It's only when we discover our wholeness, which is the timeless consciousness, that which is always present, that which has always been here. What you were before you were born. You see how your mind can't answer that? What was I before I was born? Let me think about that. Of course, before you were born, you didn't have thoughts to think about it, did you? So thoughts won't do you much good. What was it before I was born? Because what you were before you were born is what you are now. It's very interesting that in a lot of the ancient Buddhist sayings, some of the masters often use the word unborn to describe the true nature of the self. Also in Christianity, a lot of the mystics talked of the unborn. Meister Eckhart talked of the unborn. St. John talked of the uncreated. In the midst of what's created, in the midst of what's born. What's born about you? What's born about you? You know what's born? Your body was born, your mind was born, your personality was born, your traits were born, your conditioning was... Everything you can think about yourself was born when your body was born, was it not? There it is. Everything that you can see, taste, touch, think, feel, or imagine came through a product of your being born, your birth. What's unborn? That's where the truth is. That's where the eternal truth is. The unborn, the uncreated. What about you that was born is completely obsessed with the project of what it means to be alive. It's a necessity of life, that life anxiously continues to try to sustain itself. Have you noticed? Not just human beings, but you look at a flea, and a flea is anxiously trying to sustain itself. Look at anything. Look at a flower. Look at a plant. Look at anything in nature. Anything that's alive, its prime directive is to sustain itself. Right? And all the various strategies that whatever life form thinks will help it sustain itself. So if a life form thinks that being very dominating will help sustain itself, it'll be very dominating. If a life form thinks that being very submissive will help sustain itself, it'll be very submissive. Most life forms are sort of back and forth. So in life itself, there is this constant effort to sustain itself. That's a big part of when the mind goes into this egoic trance. Me. This is what's operating. It's just sort of part of life. Without that, life would cease to exist. What if everything stopped trying to sustain itself? How long would things sustain themselves? You know, fleas thought, why should we do it? We'll stop. Well, who cares? Who cares if the species go on? We'll just stop. We won't eat. We won't fly around human beings and annoy them, picking at their skin, and what the heck? Life needs this. What if your lungs stop trying to sustain you? Maybe for not important. What if your heart had no impulse to sustain life? It will just stop. So I'm not saying in any way that this is a mistake, or this shouldn't be, this impulse to sustain existence. But when our minds grab this, that's very natural about life, sustain my existence. When your mind grabs that, and then uses this very natural thing about life, and it sustains your sense of a separate self, then you have me, separate me, and my whole life is about sustaining myself. Think of the last time you argued with somebody. You were trying to sustain yourself. So this natural force of life gets mixed up in our minds. And we only come to a real rest when we can go beyond simply trying to sustain ourselves. Beyond that impulse. It's there. You'll take care of yourselves, obviously, but something that's deeper than that. What's more important than simply continuing? Most people don't get to that point seriously until they think they're about to die. Most people never get to that point until they get very close to death. They never get close, they never get in the atmosphere of what's more important than sustaining my life until it becomes very clear to them that their life is not going to be sustained very much longer. You see? Only when that becomes very clear, and they're in the last days or weeks or months, to some people, because there's at that point for that person, there's no reason to put all of their energy into something that's quite clearly not going to be sustained forever. Of course, most of us can delude ourselves into thinking that we're going to actually succeed. Funny thing, life has this impulse to sustain itself, and it's the only thing it can't ultimately do forever. You see? Its whole impulse is to do something that it's going to inevitably fail at least in part. As a whole, life is fine. It will always sustain itself. So when someone gets very close to death, if they're very lucky, this deeper impulse starts to arise. Because their energy stops going into sustaining something that they clearly can't. And when they can't, it's just possible that then they might have the emotional and psychological energy to let go of fixating on that, and something else much deeper. A deeper impulse can start to arise.